Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series, where we take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the DM supplement Strangely Changed, designed by Gabriel Hatcher for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review, and if you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Strangely Changed is a book of curses. It is not the first book of curses that I have reviewed. I guess hopefully won't be the last, because we all like a good curse. Specifically, though, this may be the first one that expands beyond item curses, because obviously the Dungeon Master's Guide has a lot of items, although probably could use more, that are cursed, and even has, I believe, a rule on, just marrying curses to people or items or whatever events. So I have reviewed products in the past that supplements that provide more of those cursed items, either original cursed items, or they'll take items from the Dungeon Masters, from the DMG, and apply cursed effects to those. What this does is a little bit of everything. Well, not even to say a little bit. There's 100 curses in this book, which is a ton. This is like a 30 or 40 page supplement that literally just does curses, and divided up evenly between item curses, personal curses, and party curses. So item curses are pretty much what you expect. It's just an item that happens to have a cursed effect. It's supposed to be hidden. You're not supposed to know about it. And then once you attune or maybe even touch it, then you are going to be applied with that curse. And usually it's kind of maybe an ironic curse with the item doing like the opposite of what it's supposed to be, or it's an original item that you're not even sure. Maybe it's got it's an original magic item, but it has this other curse effect attached to it. The other two are personal curses. Personal curses are a just debilitating thing that happens to the person without being attached to any particular item. It can be somewhat RP focused, but usually it also has some kind of mechanical debuff associated with it. And then party curses is basically just a personal curse that is supposed to be applied to the whole party. Although when I get into that, I don't know. I didn't see a lot of them as like, why isn't this just a personal curse? It just seems like it's a personal curse that just suddenly applied to everybody for whatever reason. But I will say that a lot of the party curses especially lent themselves to being used maybe in a environmental effect, or like an ongoing dungeon crawl, or like the penalty to like failing a save in a trap room or something. You could apply this interesting curse effect ongoing, versus using it as a literal curse that's like from a hag or something, or from a god, but just like almost like a trap debuff. So if you expand how you think about using curses, I think this could just be used as a really good resource for applying those effects. That's the good news. The bad news is I don't think it's very well laid out. Not to say that it's confusing to get through it, but gosh, I really think it could have been done better. So the way it's organized is just kind of paragraphs, and you've got each curse. There's no real rhyme or reason in terms of how many per page or anything. There's obviously different lengths. You have 2 subheadings per curse. What does it entail, and how did it happen? That is a mouthful to put as a subheading for every single curse entry you have. I found that really awkward, and I did not like it at all in terms of how I was going to organize it. I mean, if I could just give any advice, it would be to organize this to where, especially like it's an item curse, then say, okay, here's the kind of item it is, right? Either it's a specific item, like there's, what's a good example? There's one that's like a periaptive wound closure that does the opposite kind of a thing, just a mean curse. I didn't write that one down, unfortunately. All right, we'll move on. And give me that specific item. Or if it's a kind of item, like one of them is one of the first ones, Breastplate of the Undying Flame, is like any armor with an elemental immunity. Okay, well, let's make that a separate section, a separate bullet point, whatever. Put that on there, at the start of each item curse. Then tell me what's the like mechanical thing that the curse does to you, and then you can tell me, in a different section, like, okay, who provides this curse, or where does the curse come from? Which I appreciate all of these curses basically try to do that with the how did it happen subheading. Again, there's an easier way. You could just say curse origin or something, but some of them are specific, and they offer specific stories. One of them that I like is the Curse of the Arbalest. And the actual curse is really fun, too. It's a crossbow that never stops shooting, like magical bolts. As soon as you, like, attune to it or pick it up, I forget which it works, but it just automatically keeps firing forever and ever and ever, which obviously is pretty problematic, and that's an interesting cursed item. And how did it happen? Well, there's this gnomish inventor who created this curse because a buyer didn't want to pay for it, and then unfortunately because of the curse, the buyer ended up killing the inventor. You know, that's a fun little story and everything. Not all of them have that nice little anecdote, though. A lot of them are just kind of, oh, this is a curse that's frequently created by, you know, druids who are having a grudge or something. And to where it's like, I don't know, that kind of origin isn't really helpful if you're just going to do a generic, vague, you know, kind of hand-waving motion with it. And to be fair, and I'm not sure every curse necessarily needs a specific origin, but the designer said, well, yes, it does, because I've created this separate subheading for every single curse, and now I've got to come up with an origin story for all of them. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. In fact, the Curse of the Arbalest is a great example also, because I fear that some of these entries don't, they lack proper details when it comes to the rules and the mechanics behind something. So again, the Curse of the Arbalest, the crossbow constantly fires. That's a fun idea. I really haven't seen anything like that. That's really interesting. How does the firing work, right? Because the person isn't doing the firing themselves if it's automatically firing. It even says if you destroy the crossbow, the curse continues, which I love. Firing once around until the curse is broken. If an attempt is made to destroy the crossbow, it will break as a normal crossbow would, but the ammunition will continue to conjure and be shot out at the same angle and speed as if it was still whole and functioning. That's amazing. So it's a really scary curse. Obviously, you can just do the remove curse spell for a lot of these, which that's another subheading to have. How do you get rid of it? Instead of just having it be part of this ongoing paragraph, I think it would just be easier to break these up into smaller subheadings. But what are the rules for the crossbow then? How do you know? It doesn't say, like, what's the to-hit chance? How much damage does it do? Are we just supposed to look at a normal crossbow? Like, these kind of details you're going to have to provide me. You can't really assume anything when it comes to especially new magic items, because I have no idea. You're supposed to use the character's own stats, even though they're technically not firing the crossbow. It's automatically firing, for example. There's other ones that also have some interesting, like, monsters associated with them. There's the Periapt of Wound Closure one, of Blood. But they don't give me any stats for that monster or, like, some creature. Like, they'll be like, a ghost follows you around all the time, you can't get rid of it, and then if you do a certain thing, that will cause the ghost to manifest and attack you. Well, do we use the ghost stat block? Do we use the specter stat block? Like, what stat block do we use for that? Another one is you constantly, like, scream insects. A lot of these, by the way, are very good for horror stories. You're constantly, like, just insects are just pouring out of you, you know, like classic scenes from horror movies. And, well, okay, what kind of insects? Is it a swarm of beetles? Like, what stat block are we using for that? So you can see my annoyance. I really like the ideas behind a lot of these curses. Had some really fantastic ideas, and I'll go through, like, a montage of some of my favorites. But, like, I love the Arbalest one, but they needed a little more rule sets. Don't have me come in and have to start making assumptions and confused about how to actually implement some of these things. You can't just be willy-nilly about, hey, a ghost is spawned like that. Because in D&D, that matters. Like, oh, well, what kind of ghost? Like, there's different kinds of ghosts. There's different stat blocks for me to use. Like, that's a regular ghost is like a CR4 creature. Is that what we're using here? One of them is like, there's this little bat creature that follows you around and constantly tries to make bargains and deals with you, which seems hilarious and crazy and weird. But there's no stat block for this creature, even though it says you can kill this creature and he comes back again. Well, like, what do we use? Now, every once in a while, something does have a rule for it. And especially if it's more of a trap type situation, then there will be something like you got to make this kind of saving throw or it does this kind of damage. But I noticed that especially when it used a creature effect, then it was lacking in detail. So that's a big bummer. But let's go over some of the curses that I actually like. So I feel like I've been very negative with this book so far. And actually, I really do love the curse ideas here, because even though it's not laid out how I would prefer and it's lacking some details, the meat of the dish is absolutely fantastic, which is the curses themselves have some really fun ideas. I did write down some page numbers on the ones I like. So Dimensional Ring is a ring that attunes to you and creates essentially the other end of a bag of holding on your body. And it's tied to a certain, or haversack or whatever, the portable hole thing. And whatever person puts items into that portable hole or whatever, it comes out of your body, which is, again, an insane, weird thing to bestow upon a player. But as a DM, you could do whatever the hell you wanted to, and maybe it would make the players want to be able to try to find that item. It's usually supposed to be, you know, somewhat close by, just for fun, I guess, to make it have motivation for the players to find this other end. Obviously, again, they can remove curse or do something, but just having just random ass items or loot just spilling out of the person's body, you know, it doesn't seem like mechanically it might do much, other than the fact that you can say, oh, somebody just stuck a sword through there, now it's coming out of your hand and maybe it stabs you. You know, you could have a lot of fun with that. That's just a crazy thing. And then to actually stop it, you have to, you know, there's a fun rule where you have like 2 bags of holding, like one go in the other or something, and it explodes. You basically have to do that with the person. You have to put the person with their, again, attuned thing they can't take off into the bag of holding, and then it kind of explodes and thrusts everybody out. What a fantastic idea. The Devil's Chest is a chest that you open it up, and as soon as you do, all of your shit goes in the chest. It closes, and a devil appears and says, all right, let's make a deal. How do you want to get your stuff back? That's a fantastic encounter idea, which, you know, let alone a curse you can do on somebody, even though the curse is technically tied to the chest. But you can see how a lot of these, you know, yes, it's a cursed item, but like that just created an entire encounter, right? Based on that curse. Like suddenly there's a chest, you go to open the chest, all your shit's gone. It's locked in this super magical chest, and a straight up devil appears. And now you have to deal with this new situation, this new complication. Chain of the Fiend is some magical, kind of like dimensional shackles that constantly seek out. They're almost sentient and just try to grab people. And it can magically expand itself and keep on creating links and just chaining people together. Again, I'm almost thinking this is better as a trap room in some kind of Tomb of Horror style dungeon than necessarily what I'm even thinking of as a cursed item, which is really interesting and makes me enjoy this book more, frankly, that it's not just the regular, okay, well, here's a, you know, potion of healing that's really this kind of potion that does to you. Instead, it's like, these are like straight up clever complications and interesting scenarios based on what should be just be innocuous items like laying around or things like treasure chests. Well, I guess treasure chests should be, you should think twice anyway, but, you know, like a length of chain or something. Those are all just really good ideas at making, you know, items into maybe even entire encounters. So really enjoyed some of the ideas there. So personal curses. This is one where I would love to see, like, okay, where does this curse come from? If it's a personal curse, like, and again, how did it happen? The designer tries to do that, but just make it a little bit easier to, you know, figure out like what kind of creatures can do this, or does this one have a specific story behind it that then spreads out of there. Personal curses can include more RP ones, like a curse of melodrama just makes a certain, you know, trait or emotion come to the forefront. One you like can never stop talking. That would actually be an annoying one to RP, I think. One of a fascinating one is like the Curse of the Order of One or something. Where's that one? I didn't write down the page numbers on this one, unfortunately. Curse of the, yes, Original Order. Restricts its victim to the rule of one. You can only have one of any item, like one shoe, one sword, one ring, like the rule of them all. What a pain in the butt that is, and that is a hilarious idea. There's a Curse of Extreme Paranoia, which prevents you from long resting. That's pretty bad. There's a classic King Midas curse, where it transforms your touch into a specific material. It doesn't have to be gold. It could be, you know, wood or oil or water or, you know, whatever other thing you want to use that could touch it. In fact, there's another one associated with gold, where like gold constantly like sticks to your body and like you like hoover it up, but it's also stuck to you, which is an interesting concept. There's one where you slowly transform into a construct, like over the course of days or weeks or something, until you become just a fully different race in terms of your stats and everything. Although I'm not sure it says on there. It probably neglects to say what the construct's actual stats are. Curse of the Golem is a straight up Terminator. It's the Terminator plotline where there's just a golem out there somewhere who's coming at you, doesn't want to do anything but hunt you down. You know, it follows, whatever you want to use is a fantastic idea. Spawning insects from the mouth is one. There's a lot of really interesting ideas that could spawn entire encounter ideas or like personal quests for players. So when I say it's a book of curses, I think it's almost underestimating or doing it a disservice to say just curses. It's almost a book of story ideas when it comes down to a lot of these different curse effects. And then we have party curses, which are frankly very similar to personal curses, but maybe would work as entire, you know, room effects in a dungeon, or again, it's some kind of ongoing environmental effect. So some ideas here. There's living nightmares that cause shadows that attack you when you're asleep. There's a curse of a hanged woman that you see who's like pointing at you and screaming, which, holy crap, a lot of these would be really good for just horror, right? For like a horror-themed haunted house, you could use a lot of these curses for. One of them is you're all cursed to be human, which is pretty hysterical for a campaign like my current live streaming campaign in Call from the Deep, where they're all playing anthropomorphic player characters. That would actually be a really ironic, funny curse, is to all be human all of a sudden. One of them, I swear to goodness, is from The Simpsons, which is the Stone of Humility, where you've got this giant stone, around the neck of each victim afflicted with it, weighing 50 pounds, hung on a thick rope which cannot be cut. That's literally the stone cutters, like, remove the stone of shame and attach the stone of triumph, and just trying to walk naked while carrying this. I guess I didn't say you're walking naked, but I literally could not help but think of The Simpsons from that curse idea. One of them is you constantly drip oil of slipperiness. One cool one, the curse of the target, is another really hex of the target. Sorry, another really interesting idea. Anytime there's a natural one with a ranged attack within 10 feet of you, it hits you. You just become a pincushion. Now that's interesting because it's not happening all the time. It's pretty niche, and that might be an actual example where you can permanently afflict. In fact, that reminds me of like starting a game of the Fallout video games, where you could take those traits at the very beginning of character creation, and you would have they would include some kind of positive and negative thing, so you would kind of balance itself. This reminds me of like one of the negative halves. So like the positive one would be like maybe you crit more often or something, or your crits do extra things, but also if anybody critically fails near you, or a shot misses you anywhere close by, then it just hits you all the time, which is pretty funny. So I thought that one was really interesting. One of them, the curse of like the limbs, I forget what it's called. You're anytime you take any kind of damage, you basically lose a limb. It doesn't do damage to you and the limb just falls down, but like now you're just out a fucking limb, including your head. You would still live through it, so you become almost zombified in that way, where your limbs just, it doesn't hurt you anyway, but it's still just a hilarious pain in the ass to deal with that. One of them is a spectator curse, where everybody takes on a different aspect of the spectator. So spectator is like the beholder, but is a lower level beholder, basically only has 4 different eye stalks and eye abilities. And this curse has everybody be affected by one of those different eye rays, but not to where you can fire it, but to where you are basically always having to deal with like being confused or being vulnerable to damage, and your eyes actually, turn those different colors, and it's supposed to affect all of you together. That's just a cool idea, again, for a beholder-themed dungeon or a beholder-themed trap. I wouldn't necessarily curse the whole party with these effects like for ongoing things, but certainly for like the length of a dungeon or for a penalty for, failing a trap or something, and then have that affect them, at least for the rest of that adventuring day, I think would be more useful. So that's really how I was looking at a lot of these curses once I started reading more of this book and going, okay, these are less like simple item curses that are like, oh, well, it's kind of a pain in the butt, but more like these ongoing, almost like story ideas or things you could supplement in a dungeon crawl, just a lot more expansive and interesting than I was expecting. So big thumbs up for, honestly, what we get here, which is 40 pages worth of just really interesting curses that go far beyond I think what I was expecting. All right, pros and cons for Strangely Changed. Pro 100, I think it's about 100. I tried to count them and it looked like there was 30 some on each one. So I'm going to say 100 item curses, personal curses, and party-wide curses. A huge quantity here, but as you just saw, I think the quality is also really high, which is my next pro. Each huge variety of curses, including body horror, being hunted by creatures, transformation, having to deal with large personality quirks or physical detriments or debilitations, just everything I think you could think of, and a lot of things I would never have thought of are in this book. And pro, each curse has an origin or a source. I will go ahead and give a pro for the designer giving though that as an option to just try to give me some more context and lore behind each curse, even though not all of them are particularly interesting, but a lot of them are, and that still helps me determine like, well, where the hell does this come from, or how does this make sense? Between you and me, I don't necessarily need a lot of curses to make sense. Also, especially if it's used as like a dungeon penalty, then it's just whatever the wizard created. A wizard did it. Cons. awkward format and layout. I really think this one needed to be basically redone from a book standpoint. Not like the font and the pictures are problematic. They're not at all. But just the way it's laid out, I think I hate the fact that it's got questions. What does it entail? How did it happen for all the subheadings? That's a huge thumbs down. I think it could have been separated a little more, you know, bump out the kind of items or creatures its origin story it comes from, you know, make it a little bit easier to read, make it so it's just, yeah, I did not enjoy the way it's laid out, although I was still able to get through it fairly easily. But I would have a lot, if I were editing this book, I would have had a lot of red lines in it, even though the content itself, you know, I didn't find any like typos or anything like that. And then the other con is that some curses do lack very important details, including like what creature stat blocks to use at certain, you know, anytime it mentions like a creature, for example, it's just not included here at all. So that's a major oversight. And again, if I was editing this, I would be circling all of this and putting and writing in there, okay, what ghost do I use? Or what is the stat block of this bat creature we're trying to do? Or what is, you know, it's a lot, not all of them are like that. Some of them have, you know, the saves and the things in there, but a lot of them, it was enough in there to where I included it as an official con and be like, this is actually going to be problematic for this book, for a D&D, you know, essentially rule supplement. Final verdict: by expanding beyond the usual item curses, Strangely Changed provides a reservoir of nasty effects to bestow upon unlucky party members. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on the channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brandon, Zenicider, Eclectic, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Corey, Big Nut, John F, John L, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Cap Crystal Lake, Counselor, Andrew, Daryl, Reldrin, Captain 2079, Stephanie, Andy, Patrick, Jason, Ismail, Amit, Lumpy, Spuds, Koi, Sharny, and gold patrons: RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Luma, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Jerome, Nathan, Fesca, Torta, Scott, Rufus, Carolyn, Jerry, Thomas, Glenn, and Marcus. Thank you all very much for your support.